I've done a social experiment with this over the last several weeks, and I've posed this question to 75 people. Phil was number 76. And the question was, in an interaction in the modern world between a man and a woman who have just met each other, after they, if they're talking and they exchange pleasantries at the very beginning of the conversation, what is invariably the first question that the female will pose to the male in that interaction? And he answered, "What do you do for a living?" He worded it a little bit more colorfully. He said, "What do you do for demonic coin of the realm?" or something to that effect, for fake fiat Federal Reserve notes, But essentially the question remains the same. What is the occupation that you make money doing? Okay? Now, this being the primary foremost question that is posed, what does that say about what is going on in the modern conditioned female mind? Well, we'll get into that in a minute, but let me give you the results of my little social experiment that I've conducted here over the past few weeks. 100% of people that I posed that question to, 76 out of 76, answered the same way. What do you do for a living? 100%. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the listening audience, okay? If I went out on the street corner here in South Philadelphia, and I went on the corner and I just said, I posed the question to 100 people as they walked by, could you please tell me what color the sky is on a cloudless, weatherless day? During the day, when not at nighttime, but during the day, on a cloudless, weatherless day, what color is the sky? What color does the sky refract to the human eye? I will almost guarantee you that you will not get 100% of people to answer with the word blue. I will almost guarantee it. Yet 100% of people, you know how difficult it is to get 100% agreement on any question? You go out on the street corner and ask people, what planet is this that you are standing on? I guarantee you 100% of people won't respond with the Earth. I will almost guarantee it. As crazy as that sounds, trust me, you will find somebody that will give a different answer. To get 100% agreement on asking that many people anything is unimaginably extraordinary and says volumes about this social dynamic. It speaks volumes. And the reason for this is because the utmost thing in the mind of most people, and I will say this is true for both men and women, but it's overwhelmingly the case for the conditioned woman in society, and everybody will make excuses for this, and they'll have justifications, till the end of time, because they won't want to look at this dynamic honestly. They won't want to look at it honestly, what this means, what this says, societally, is going on psychologically within the minds of the vast, overwhelming majority of socially conditioned, socially engineered females. What they are saying is, my value system is based in money. Get as offended about it as you want. I don't care what anybody says about that. It's the truth. That is what that dynamic is saying psychologically. Now let me ask the listeners out there this question, okay? Could you pose a hypothetical reason for me to contemplate and for the other listeners to contemplate? Could anybody out there tell me why the first question that does not come up in conversation between a man and a woman interacting socially in our society, that the woman would ask to the man, or that the man would ask to the woman for that matter, is, do you know the difference between right and wrong behavior definitively? Or in other words, are you a truly moral being? Why isn't that the first question that's asked? Why isn't that the first question that's asked, ladies and gentlemen? Want to know why? Because most people don't give a damn about that. At all. At all. That's why. That's the truth. I don't need anybody to hypothetically answer the question. I know what the answer to the question is. Because their values aren't based in anything that is a real value. It's based on an illusion called garbage, nonsense, fake fiat money. That is nothing but a control system for the mind and behaviors and emotions. And I guarantee you will get tons of excuses and tons of justifications about that. You know, I'm a misogynist for bringing that up. Don't you know? You know? It's because money is the value system that they have been taught, and that's the value system they've retained. Morals? Oh, who gives a damn? I don't need to know anything about that, you know? Do you condone or support violence against other people by your support of the state? No, I don't need to know anything about that. Because invariably 99.9% of these people all do support the state. They're statists. Now, here's my question, folks. Let's get to the underlying psychological factor that's going on there. Let's get to the underlying psychological causal agent, the causal factor of what's taking place in the manipulated, conditioned female psyche. Again, folks, one of the things I want to re-emphasize that I talked about last week is we have to understand that this is not human nature. And many men are absolutely just as brainwashed and conditioned and mind-controlled and socially engineered. My contention would be that more men are out of that conditioning than women are. I think I'm going to leave the presentation portion of the show for tonight right there as it is, and we will continue talking about these topics on next week's show. I'll be continuing to delve into the neo-feminism agenda, the mind control that is specifically, and the social engineering that is specifically targeted toward women to control their perceptions and their ideas of what they want and ideas of attractiveness, etc. You know, we'll talk about a lot of these things. And we'll get into how this has completely really driven a wedge between men and women in our society, and I'll also eventually be getting into some of the lashback that's starting to occur when it comes to different types of men's reaction type movements to this, and that'll be coming up on future shows. In future weeks, I'll also be going back into the importance of gun ownership rights and why it's so important to arm yourself and to know how to use arms. And I'll be getting into the Second Amendment like I did before, and talking about that, and really also talking about how a lot of people still don't grasp and understand this importance, especially in other countries. Thankfully, here in America, people still are very much into gun ownership and fighting hard every day to retain those inherent natural rights. On future shows, I'll also be talking about the occult history of Nazism. I think I'm going to do an entire series on this and explain a lot of the personalities and groups that were involved in bringing Nazism out of the realm of the occult and turning it into a political ideology, in the 20th century. But we're going to go to the roots of where that came from, and I'll be breaking that down, how that was done and fomented through a lot of different dark occult orders. I'll also be going into solutions again to try to bring a social dynamic to waking people up. A social technique for waking people up. This is what I call maven targeting. I believe it's a phrase that I've coined as well. I haven't heard anybody else use it, but I will explain the concept of what the maven is and why we should try to essentially focus in a group setting on changing the mind of the maven of a social dynamic, particularly a family, if possible. Which would probably be the most effective. Instead of trying to, just wake individuals up, we need to target key people when it comes to waking them up. And then that influence will have a greater effect on other people, because the maven is the person who is essentially, their opinions are listened to. Okay?
I want to talk about the men aspect of how they're targeting men. In a sec, but I want to say I noticed that what on earth is happening is a piece of high magic. I've noticed.
I want to thank you for that. I mean, I consider that this is all about alchemical transmutation from lower consciousness, base consciousness, to higher consciousness and true awareness. So I kind of like that assessment, and I kind of like that comparison to real magic, because I do consider it that.
I don't know if you have a hipster epidemic in Philly, but
oh God, yes. Oh boy,
don't get me started. All right, let's get started on this. All right, man. The emasculated hipster man-child, right? They're everywhere.
It's pretty bad. I mean, that's what they want. They want somebody who, isn't a strong person, physically or mentally. They want someone who doesn't care about gun ownership. They want somebody who doesn't really care about rights, who wants to be trendy. They want somebody who wants to be popular instead of being moral. They want somebody who's going to just take on pleasure pursuits in society and try to go along with the flow and fit in, instead of really standing on their own as a true nonconformist and really going against the flow of this immoral system that we are all enslaved by. They don't want that, and so the hipster mindset is absolutely perfect for that. It's about pop culture, it's about popularity, and it's about, the same type of vapid mindsets that I was talking about earlier,
Yeah, totally. They're like spiritual spiritual invalids and soulless mannequins. Right. They're worried about like fashion and who can wear women's clothing. It's ridiculous, and they're just testicleless man children. And it gets even further with fashion.
I absolutely love it, and I agree. Continue.
Yeah, me and my roommate were seeing if we can get you a laugh tonight. But anyway, the BPA. The bisphenol A, is that what you say?
Oh, yes, bisphenol A, yes.
The BPS and the polyester in your clothing, people, the petroleum products, estrogen in the beer, plastic food containers, all these are endocrine disruptors and gender-bending chemicals and estrogen mimickers. If you can get away from that stuff as much as possible, I mean, throw away your clothes. Petroleum or polyester, man, it totally turns you into a feminized man. You don't want to fight back. Just like you said, the voice, even the voices are like raising, and it's spooky. It's really spooky.
I mean, many women have actually pointed that out and said that to me, that, you just hear modern men talk and it's like, it doesn't even sound like a masculine voice anymore. They sound like, high pitched and, a lot of it is the hormones also in meat and dairy, that's pumped into the modern, meat and dairy diet. Huge. It's a huge part of it as well, but absolutely things like bisphenol A in plastics, and, they even put that in printer ink, and, it's in the plastic containers and cups, and, in clothing, as you said. It's a widespread attack. I'm actually going to get into that probably next week to talk about a lot of the ways that, they're turning people into these genderless, slaves. And they're destroying the sex drive, through food, water, radionics, chemtrails is a part of that.